Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Chocolate Life Live. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and I'm your moderator today. I'm also the creator and the moderator of thechocolatelife.com. Today, we're going to be talking about Halloween chocolate and specifically about ethical Halloween chocolate and Halloween chocolate treats, which is a topic that often comes up at around this time of year. Rather than giving out regular Halloween candy, how are you going to go and actually, are there ethical options? Are there better options for chocolate candy that you are going to be able to give out to the people who are going to come to your door looking for candy? Before we jump into today's topic and look over what it is that I want to share with you, I want to remind everybody that you can go into either the live chat on YouTube or go into the comments on LinkedIn or Facebook. And if you want to give a shout out where in the world you're connecting from, please go do that. Just let me know where in the world you're connecting from. But if you have a question about today's topic or if you have comments that you'd like to make, I will get those comments and questions up on the screen and respond to them during the course of the hour. Of course, I also want to remember everybody that every episode of the Chocolate Life Live is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. And if you're not currently a member, I encourage you to go over to thechocolatelife.com. And I'm going to share with you right now. I mean, this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life. Currently, this page says account because I'm logged into my account. What you can do is it'll say join. If you're not a member, you can join. There's always a free membership level. So please go and show your support of the work that I do here. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment on the video, give a thumbs up, would be really, really helpful. And with all of that mentioned, said, and done, let's go jump into today's topic. As always, I create a post for every single one of the live streams, and I put resources into the live stream, as well as an episode overview. So talking about what it is that I'm going to talk about. And then a bunch of resources. So what I want to do is I want to start off and really start thinking about some of those resources are. And sort of the topic for today, ethical chocolate is the chocolate that you're giving out. For the most part, is it a treat or is it a trick? So number one, gifting this year and spending on Halloween just in general is going to be down a little bit. 41% of Americans at least say that they're not going to be spending as much money this year as they have in past years. But this also gives us an idea about how much money is going to be spent over the course of the year on different areas. And so it looks like there's going to be about $2 billion, which is going to be spent on chocolate and candy and confectionery in general, just on things that we're giving out. It sounds like a lot to be given out over the course of a very, very short period of time, but it really does talk about the scale of the impact of Halloween. And so you are a craft chocolate maker and you're living in a community. Is there something that you as a craft chocolate maker can do to create a product that's perhaps price competitive, that will enable you to go and provide an offering or an alternative offering for what people are doing, rather than going to the big box store and just getting huge bags of the cheapest chocolate candy they can find and handing it out willy-nilly. Perhaps there's a way to provide an alternative. So is this a market opportunity? Just something to consider. It's a huge business. I mean, so one way to think about it is that the chocolate candy confectionery business in the United States is somewhere between 20 and $30 billion a year. It depends on whose numbers you talk about. So when we're talking about $2 billion spent on product that's going to be given out essentially in one day, that represents an enormous percentage of the overall spend on chocolate candies in the United States and high-end candies in the United States. So roughly what, 2 out of 30, 1/15, 6%, something like that is being spent for one day. It's pretty epic when you think about the impact of it. But another way to also think about it is that as a general rule, and this is something that I learned in my marketing days a long time ago. I don't know, when I say a long time ago, I mean like 30 some odd years ago. In general, what you do is you think of the United States as about 40% of the world market for a mature product or a mature technology, that Europe writ large is another roughly 30% of the world market, and then the rest of the world is the other 30%. And the United States, maybe we're going to put North America, so USA, Mexico, and Canada. But it gives you an idea that if we're spending, $30 billion a year, then chocolate is roughly 150 billion dollar a year industry, chocolate confectionery. So we can go take a look at these numbers and see the impact that they have just generally. Before we jump into the rest of this, what I wanted to do was also point out something that I thought was fairly interesting. This is an article on HuffPost. It showed up this time 2 years ago, but I really hadn't considered it before, which is that the Halloween candy you give out reveals how much you care about status. Now, for I was married. For over a dozen years. I lived in Westchester County, which is north of Manhattan, north of New York City, and I lived in a very wealthy community called Larchmont. And a lot of people in Larchmont are, in fact, very, very concerned about status. And there are a lot of questions here, which are you going to be known as the house that gives out the big bars, all right? And people are going to go there because they know from year to year that they're going to get big chocolate bars. And I just thought it was really interesting to think about that. One of the great things about this article is there's a lot of contributions from an old friend and colleague of mine, a woman by the name of Beth Kimmerly. She's actually an expert on the history of American confectionery and candy and things like that. And so, shout out to Beth for her contribution in that. But going back to the previous article, when you think about giving out ethical chocolate, I mean, do you want to be known as the household that gives out the fruit equivalent of chocolate? So if your household, are you giving out apples when everybody wants candy bars or something like that? I mean, are you giving out Necco wafers? Personally, I don't understand the attraction to Necco wafers, but one of the things that's not talked about here in the article, let me make sure that it's not. Let me go see if I can find ethical. Um, Excuse me. Let me see if I can spell it properly. Um, um, it's not mentioned on the page at all. So it's interesting that when it comes to thinking about status, the idea of the status, the ethical or not aspect of the chocolate that you're giving out doesn't appear to be a part of the status equation. And so this got me thinking: should it be? Should the fact that we're worried about things like deforestation or illegal labor in chocolate, how does that enter into the status question, right? About how we're going to be perceived by our neighbors and by our kids' friends uh, when we go and do that. So, a nuance to think about, and perhaps it's a way to start thinking about marketing around these issues, which will be interesting. I don't know the answer to that question, but it is certainly something that now that it's come to mind, is something I'm going to it's going to be start thinking about it. So normally, what I do is I will get a lot of emails from PR firms. I will get there'll be notifications in newsletters that I get, supply chain and other newsletters about ethical Halloween candy. And so I did a real quick Google alert search. Let's zoom up on this. And one of the things that's really interesting to me about this, I'm not gonna put up an alert for the rest of the for the rest of the for the rest of the season, is that there aren't a whole lot of episodes, or there aren't a whole lot of press releases, there aren't a whole lot of articles this year around the notion of alternatives to industrial candy and industrial chocolate, which I thought was very interesting. Normally, 2 weeks out or the month out before Halloween, start getting inundated with articles about, how do you go about making sure that you're buying chocolate and giving candy that is good for the environment and doesn't involve slave labor. I would have expected a lot of stuff to show up in my feed, and it turns out, it's you know the first thing I showed you was about how inflation is going to affect people's decision making processes around the chocolate they purchase. The articles are about saving on Halloween, saving on Halloween, saving on Halloween candy. My guess is, oh, these two articles appear to be syndicated, right? So we look at with sugar costs up 30% the past couple of years, with sugar costs up. So this is the same article, just in two different locations. It turns out that, yeah, so finances. This appears to be this issue of associated with a relatively high cost of candy. This appears to have overtaken the notion of ethical chocolate, of giving out a better quality product, and better quality in this particular case means we want chocolate which doesn't contribute to deforestation and climate change. Quality means we don't want chocolate which is in which illegal child labor or slave labor is involved. At least in the United States, when it comes to that, there may be there Halloween is not as big in Europe. Although, you know what, one of the things that I miss about being in Paris for the Salon du Chocolat, and even though I'm going to be in London this year, the week before the salon, my travel schedule doesn't give me time to comfortably go to Paris, even for one day, unfortunately, is that I love being in Paris over Halloween because the Parisians and the French in general just have this really, really interesting take on Halloween. And so that's something that I'm going to miss this year. But listen, if you're not from the United States, in the comments, how do you celebrate Halloween? Halloween, is it a big deal where you are? Are there some special traditions in terms about gifting or things you do with your family? Put them in the comments. Let me know, and I'll get them up on the screen, and we'll talk about what Halloween means to you. And if you're going to be giving away Halloween candy this year, um, what are your purchase decisions this year going to be based on? Are you worried about your pocketbook, and so you're scaling back? Are you going to go and go to a higher quality product or a more ethically produced product and give away less than you do? So maybe one piece rather than just a handful of stuff, or allowing the kids just you know put their hands into a bowl and take whatever it is they want. Let me know, how you plan to celebrate Halloween with chocolate this year. I would be interested in knowing if either of the concerns, ethical sourcing or concerns with the cost of candy, this year are going to be having an effect on what you are going to be giving out this year. Now, when I did the research for this, I wanted to let everybody know that the reason why I decided to do this particular topic this week was in one of my news feeds was an article about Tony's Chocolonely, and Tony's Chocolonely, being an ethical choice. And I believe that the link in the article that I got pointed to this particular post on a website called Green Matters. So try these seven ethical Halloween candy brands. And so this is from earlier this week. And the idea being is that Halloween candy can come with a lot of environmental, social costs. Absolutely, it can, right? It's just, um, what is the impact of sugar production on environmental and other concerns? A lot of sugar candy is given out at this point of year. What is the impact on deforestation and child labor and other forms of illegal labor when it comes to cocoa and chocolate production? These are huge environmental and social costs. Kudos for the first things out the door is talking about these at a very high level. The cocoa industry in particular is full of poor environmental and labor practices. I don't know that I necessarily agree with the cocoa industry in particular. I mean, we like to demonize, or people like to demonize cocoa and chocolate. It's about having these poor practices, but I would want to know what is the effect of, you know, cutting down tens of thousands of hectares for sugar production in Paraguay or Uruguay or throughout the Americas. This is one of the reasons why the Dutch financed and other countries financed, imperialist expansion of the New World in the 14s, 15s, 1600s, was to find a place to plant sugar. They didn't want to rely on India and the bottleneck that the British ownership had placed, or yeah, Britain's assertion of ownership, probably a better way to think about it. These colonial to get around these restrictions. Where can we go and plant our own sugar so we don't have to pay tax on it? But I would say that when it comes to candy, sugar is certainly a huge issue. And I would also think that the packaging industry. So, when it comes to petroleum and environmental practices, when I'm thinking about the plastic that is used in wrapping, the plastic that is used in my little Halloween pails, my little pumpkin pails to carry chocolate around, I would think that it's not just the chocolate or the cocoa industry in particular has a bad rap. But I like to point out that they do have a bad rap, and there are candy, and that there are candy brands that are ethical and eco-friendly to supply sustainable Halloween. Yay! All right, so that's it. So I want to give a quick shout out to Ellen, who's watching on YouTube. Hey, Ellen, thank you very much. While you're there, if you would give a thumbs up on today's video, like it, and please. But also good quality chocolate, ethically sourced for sure, individually wrapped. So heart emoji. So, Ellen, if you're in the United States, where in the United States are you going to be doing this? And if you have any particular brands that you're thinking about giving out this, I would love to know what they are. And if you're in some other country, would love to know what the options are. If you're down in Australia, the time is a little difficult for this because it's the middle of the night there, I'm sure. But let me know what it is that you are planning to be doing. And a thumbs up would be appreciated. But we scroll down and it says these following candy companies are some of the most ethical options on the market. Well, I mean, they don't. Oh, okay. Ellen says you're in Massachusetts. Okay. Listen, you have some great craft chocolate makers in Massachusetts. I don't know that they make anything which is individually wrapped that you can give out for trick or treating on an economical basis. But I would love to know if they are, and I can put links to them up on the screen, up on the today's post. Oh, you're looking now for the best ones. So perhaps there will be some options which are presented here, which you can go out. So Ocho Candy. So one of the things that we'll find out as we look through Green Matters and we look through many other of the recommendations that are done is that almost everybody is relying on fair trade certification. They just say, if it's fair trade certified, it's ethical. And one of the things that, if you're a regular listener to what it is that I do here, you know that fair trade promises one thing or promises a range of things that they don't necessarily deliver on. And so just saying that something is fair trade certified is actually not any kind of guarantee. It may be better than something else. Something that is Rainforest Alliance certified may be better than something else, but it's not necessarily. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is ethically produced, unfortunately, right? So just that. So Ocho Candy, and I'm not going to go look at them on Instagram. By the way, you will notice that if I just close this briefly, there is a link to this article on today's post. So if you're interested, you don't have to write it down. You don't have to memorize things. You just open up the post and you can scroll down and you can say, oh, I'm interested in knowing more about Ocho Candy. So that's one of the reasons why I do the embedded links. So here's the mention, Tony's Chocolonely. This what's got me interested in today's topic. It's a Dutch chocolate brand known largely for large chocolate bars in colorful wrappers. They pride themselves on promoting and making chocolate that is free from child labor and exploitation. That's actually a misrepresentation of Tony's current position. So right now they're working towards making sure that the chocolate is illegal child labor free, slave labor free, that's free from exploitation. But they no longer claim in their marketing materials that the chocolate that you purchase is actually free from this. So this is something that I see all the time. And this is the thing I think that caught my eye in the link that I had, is that they're making chocolate that is free from child labor and exploitation. So not the case. But Tony's brilliant marketing, I will not take that away from them. And they are in fact producing tiny pieces, so pieces that are individually less expensive, right? So, is this going to be better than, right? Something from Nestle or something from Mondelez or something from Hershey, maybe. But keep in mind that Tony's, it is only Tony's cocoa supply chain that is under this rubric, that the chocolate for them is manufactured by Barry Callebaut. Barry Callebaut is currently being sued in federal court in Washington, D.C. around its illegal labor practices, or knowingly profiting from illegal labor practices in West Africa. And so Tony's doesn't mention this relationship very often. It's buried in their annual report. And so I would give Tony's a hard pass just because they're not transparent. They're not being transparent about that relationship with Barry Callebaut. So we next go Yum Earth gummies. No chocolate in gummies, but still no mention of fair trade. But from an ethical perspective, they're talking about allergen free. So does making something allergen free make them ethical? I would say no, not on the top of it. But when we are giving out things, we do need to worry about allergies. It's we know that, excuse me, a Snickers bar contains peanuts. And so if I'm a kid with a peanut allergy, I know that I can't eat Snickers and I can give them to someone else who does leave Snickers and loves Snickers. And I can do a trade for other things. But just because it is in fact allergen free doesn't necessarily mean something that it is ethically produced. Um, Equal Exchange is an interesting company. Um, I would like to know who actually manufactures the chocolate for them, because I'm not quite sure that the manufacturing company, I mean, is the same relationship, the one between Tony's. I would worry about that, but it is an organic dark chocolate mini. How many 8-year-olds are looking for dark chocolate preferentially? Probably not. But you can purchase them in boxes of 150, or it looks like 888. That's a lot of minis. So there is an organic gifting option if what you want to do is you want to throw dark chocolate into the mix. Alter Eco. This is another question. I would have to go look at the scorecard, the Be Slavery Free / Mighty Earth scorecard, to see it's either Alter Eco or Equal Exchange. The product is made for them by a company called Chocolate Alba, and I need to understand exactly what that relationship is. But they're plant-based, super dark, plant-based. Well, if I'm not adding dairy, any chocolate is going to be plant-based. I hate the use of the phrase. It's a pet peeve. I hate the use. I'm going to do a live stream towards early November about pet peeves. When you think about chocolate and the way chocolate is marketed, what are your pet peeves? This is one of mine, plant-based, right? What else would chocolate be if it's not a milk chocolate? So what this means is they're only using non-dairy milks, and so they are vegan. Um, some of their products are vegan. So just something to consider. Also, what they're talking about in terms of ethical production, and this is something to consider, is that it says the wrappers are fully compostable. Now, compostability is a quagmire. So these are these home compostable? Are these special films that need to be in a special municipal composting facility? I would have to go and look at this, but it is, at least they're making the claim that they've thought about what the wrapping material is. And so if this is important to you, then you can feel better about this. And so there's no chocolate in Fruit Bites. Unreal Chocolate is a brand that I'm not familiar with. And so I would need to go and take a look at it. But they're talking about, again, dark chocolate coconut bars or peanut butter cups. If you want to give out a milk chocolate, these are not going to be an option for you, or a non-vegan product. These are not going to be an option for you. I notice, Ellen, you don't care for dark chocolate, right? Unfortunately, no. I mean, what you like is what you like. What you don't like is what you don't like. You should never apologize. I don't think you should ever have to apologize for what you do like and you don't like. It makes sense. There's lots of really good milk chocolate out there. There's lots of really good white chocolate out there. There's lots of really horrible white chocolate. There's lots of really horrible milk chocolate. There's lots of really horrible dark chocolate, in my opinion. But what you like is what you like, and go with that. Don't let anybody try to tell you that, to convince you that your taste is bad or that you should feel bad about what you like. All right. I think what's important, and this is something I've said before, is to understand why you like what you like. And if you can hold on to that, or you can explain to people who try to intimidate you or make you feel bad. It's like, no, this reminds me of my childhood when I used to visit my grandmother. It's like, okay, all right, that's a great reason for liking what you like, and it's a good way to get people to shut up. I have found. Anyway, so what's really interesting about this as well is that there's a link on this page, right, which points to this topic, which is zero waste Halloween candy to give trick or treaters. And I think this is a fabulous way to think about ethical, right? In addition to the idea that the chocolate itself, right? So we can balance some of these concerns, but I think it's really, really quite ironic that we have a plastic Halloween pumpkin here. Not recyclable, not compostable, most likely, probably made with petrochemicals rather than something else. And so we talk about zero waste Halloween candy, right? Oh, I mean, if you're buying one of these really cheap Halloween costumes, is it made of plastic? And so, why are we focusing just on the candy aspect of things? There is a holistic aspect of things to think about. And so, at least in this particular article, also in Green Matters, what we're doing is we're talking about zero waste Halloween candy, and they're asking an interesting question. Is there such a thing? Now, there's a big hole here because I have a VPN that's got an ad blocker in here. And so I'm blocking an ad that would go in there. So we can do something that is foil wrapped. Why is this zero waste? Maybe if it's aluminum, it can be recycled. Maybe. But I don't know how many people think about if I'm a 5-year-old and I'm eating a foil wrapped egg, and eggs are Easter, not Halloween for the most part. So mixing metaphors there. Um, Maybe something that is foil wrapped, and what I can do is I can get my children to throw this into the recycling. That makes sense. So it's zero waste, right? Or at least. So chocolate bars in paper and foil. Again, so they're talking about Chocolove. Here they're not talking about, but they're showing Chocolove as a brand. Just so you know that all of the chocolate that Chocolove uses is made by Barry Callebaut. And so you have this connection to illegal child labor that you may want to consider. And so this article is only about low waste, right? But if I'm giving Halloween candy, these are fairly large and fairly expensive bars. But it is true that if I have something that is a wrapped in a foil that is then wrapped in a paper outer wrap, as long as the foil itself is compostable or recyclable, and as long as the paper is in fact recyclable. The paper might be wax impregnated. There might be something which puts a moisture and oxygen barrier in there to extend the life of the what's inside. It may be that the paper is not, compostable or recyclable. So something to consider. It also says and then they're talking about fair trade chocolate brands. All right, so I'm not worried about mints and dots, right? So, oh, all right, yeah. So dots, which are made probably gelatin. So there's some animal. Maybe they're vegan options. Um, they do talk about some vegan options if what you want to do is use jellies. This is in a box, so probably recyclable. Boxes of raisins. Again, this goes, back to that status issue. Do you want to be known as the house that's giving out boxes of raisins? Quickly, we'll get out that they're only giving away raisins. Do you want to go to that house? And is this if you're doing? You probably want these days to do individually wrapped boxes because when I was a parent, my kids were outgoing. If the kids got something for which it looked like there was no tamper evidence seal, we'd say to the kids, "Nah, we're not going to let you have that," because we were worried about things. Mini pumpkins, I think that's a really good idea. Not sure that the kids are going to be happy getting the mini pumpkins, and they do occupy a lot of space. And if your kids are taking around a little Halloween pumpkin, So, I mean, it's really, really interesting. How spooky clementines. That's an interesting idea. Um, Again, I think this is a really bad idea. Candy from bulk bins. Again, if I were a parent and I something like saw a whole lot of unwrapped anything into a bag in my kids' bags, I would I would not let them do it unless they were individually wrapped. So that is a candy. Mini school supplies, not what kids are looking for. That's definitely a trick, not a treat for the most part, I would think. Right, but it's an interesting way to I think the whole this idea of thinking about other aspects of what it is that you're gifting or giving out for Halloween, other than is the sugar ethically sourced, is the chocolate ethically sourced, but what is the waste component of what it is that you're going to be giving out? I think it's a really, really, really interesting question to ask. Um, what I wanted to share here after I did that was that I use DuckDuckGo, a privacy-focused search engine, and so the results that I will get will be likely very different from Google or something else that you're doing. But what I noticed is, the ethical candy for Halloween as a search term gave out different results than other search terms. And I wanted to sort of, explore that. So often by the time you got to the fourth or fifth page of results, everything would be covered, but what showed up on the first page would be different. Um, but here's one. We've got this list of 7 ethical sources for a more socially contest a spooky season. So something to know about, right? Which we've already talked about. Then here's one from a company called Nourishing Joy. I'd never heard it before. We're looking for, again, recommendations for where to purchase this import, not just what brands to purchase, but where to find. So they're not talking about retailers; they're still talking about individual brands and what to go purchase. So Equal Exchange, they have a Halloween kit. Equal Exchange was mentioned, so Equal Exchange gets 2 hits on this list. Um, All natural trick or treat mix from the natural candy store. So here's Equal Exchange. Mostly, as again, Ellen, if you're into milk chocolate, maybe you can find just a milk chocolate only version of this. Maybe Raka, RAAKA, Raka minis would be something you do. I don't know if they do a non-dairy milk chocolate version. I know Askinosie has minis, but I don't know they're doing any milk chocolate minis. I need to go look. I'm a good friend of Sean, and I try to recommend him anywhere I can. I think he's a great person. Just I love him to death. But I think the company does great work. But if what you're looking for is something which is going to be either a milk or a milk alternative, I don't know that every company is going to be able to give you an option. So if we look at the natural candy store, again, we have that same issue. You're going to be looking at how much packaging there is, and whether or not dye-free, artificial flavoring-free, non-GMO, right, in your mind, is what you would constitute as ethical. It's going to be a better alternative. So organically produced sugar, organic non-GMO, the jury is out on that context. But some things which are artificial coloring free, artificial flavoring free, could be where you want to go with this. I'm looking at that bag. Not sure if there's any chocolate in there. Divine is a really interesting company. So there was created, I believe that Anita Roddick of The Body Shop, if I remember properly, was one of the co-founders of Divine, or one of the people who pushed for the creation of Divine. And they are associated with a cooperative in Ghana called Kwapakoku. And what happened is that they created a marketing company for their cocoa beans. So the cocoa would be sent to a manufacturer, and it would be marketed under the Divine brand globally, and the farmers would receive a percentage of the profits from the sales of Divine chocolate. Now, that's still going on, and so if you are interested in that kind of stuff, although I have reservations about fair trade in general, I think that the connection between Divine as a chocolate company and Coapacoco as a cocoa growing cooperative in Ghana is one that you could think about exploring. Whether or not there's any, excuse me, milk chocolate. Thank you. This is live. Somebody just knocked on my door to give me something. Anyway, is something to consider. I don't know off the top of my head. And you can see they have individually wrapped bars, and they have the equivalent of they have coins, right? Which you could also go take a look at, because it might also be, depending upon your which religion you practice, it could be a Hanukkah gelt thing as well. So if you got leftovers from Halloween, you can save them in a month later. They become something for Hanukkah gifting. So I want to go back, Ellen. You say Raka minis. So what I would do is I would just correct the spelling. It's not RACA, it's RAAKA. What I will do is I will go to the Raka website. What I will do is I will go see if I can find the page where they list the minis, and I will put a link to that page in today's post. So I will put in the link to today's post. And so within an hour at the end of the live stream today, you'll be able to see that. And if there are others I mentioned, so I will put a link to the Askinosie website where they mention the minis and things like that. So I will see if there are a couple of other companies that I think do well and put them in. I was looking to see what the feedback was going to be with respect to that. And then Brigitte chimes in and says, I love Raka. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about them that's really, really interesting. One of the things I love about them is they tend to have a lot of fun with flavors. So they're not only flavors, but inclusions. And so just really a lot of fun. Love the bars, love their experimentation. I've been to their factory in Red Hook, Brooklyn on a number of occasions. Seen their entire manufacturing process. Rather than going with quote unquote raw chocolate, they talked about it being virgin chocolate, which I think is a really, really wonderful repositioning of that concept. And they're just really, really nice people, really, really great people. Yeah, the bourbon chocolate bar, I get where you're going there. It's a really, really, so this is being really slow. And I'm not entirely sure what the issue is with this. But yeah, the bourbon chocolate is a great product. Huh. Anyway, something is slow on my end, and I'm not entirely sure why. So I'm having trouble getting things to load properly. If you're having problems, right? Is the feed stuttering or anything like that? It looks like my Wi-Fi might be low. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you're having problems seeing me or hearing me. The video is stuttering. I mean, Theo, I would, a year ago, I might have said Theo. They were purchased in the last year or so by a company, and I'm not entirely sure of that I would agree with the ethics and sourcing policies of their new corporate parent. So I would be very, very careful in thinking about Theo this year. But there's a 45% milk chocolate crunch banana bar. I mean, if you can afford something like that this year, then maybe it's an opportunity. They're offering also, so these are mini bars, so they may be there. We have a company called Endangered Species Halloween Bug Bites. So Endangered Species is another really interesting company. They don't actually manufacture chocolate. They are a marketing company. Last I recall, the manufacturing partner was a U.S. company. It used to be family owned, called Blommer Chocolate. One of the larger and older family owned chocolate companies in the United States. I believe that Guittard is the last of the really, really big family owned chocolate companies in the United States. Blommer in the last several years was sold out, I believe, was sold to Fuji Oil. Right. And I don't know how you feel about an oil company owning a chocolate company, right? And thinking about what they are. Chocolate pumpkin balls from the Natural Candy Store. They're not fair trade, but the cocoa supplier is a family-run business, right? Don't know anything about them. So, Blommer. All right. So, and So this explains why I'm no longer able to get to it. But this is one of the reasons you need to look at it. You can't actually take this at face value, right? The chocolate pumpkin balls from the Natural Candy Star are made by a company that's no longer a family-owned business, right? And so this is a year old, and that explains why they've got old information, and why you do need to go look for primary sources when people are making representations. And so think about that. All right. We've got another list of 12 ethically sourced companies. This is from 2018. So the information may be out of date, but it's also really important to check. Right. So I know that something which is a year old, 2022, has got some out of date information. This is from 2018. It's now 5 years out of date. And so we have no idea who these companies are and why they're being recommended. And I can tell you right here, things like Ferrero Rocher. Well, does traceable mean ethical? And the answer is absolutely not. And if I buy chocolate from a farm that's using illegal labor, and what I can do is I can trace the cocoa beans, not by chocolate, but cocoa from a farm that's using illegal labor. I can trace it. That doesn't make it ethical. Ferrero is an incredibly large company. And so I would not say that, even if an individual product might be traceable, certainly all their products are not. And I would be very, very careful about that. Dove chocolates, Dove is owned by Mars, right? And so I would not put Mars on any kind of list of ethical companies that I'd want to support. Ghirardelli, American company, but now owned by Lindt. And so again, I have a problem with that. Kinder, right? Certified, it says Kinder Bueno is traceable. Traceable does not mean ethical. These things are not synonyms. Again, 2018, not much has changed with respect to these companies. Divine might be the only company on this list that I would actually consider, right? So it's really important. But again, go and take a look, understand how old this is. Look at the source. All right, what is the website that this is on? Should we be looking at this? If we can go and take a look, right? What has Misha Addy been writing about? Well, she hasn't written anything since 2019. She has only written once about candy and chocolate. So is she an expert? Not entirely sure, right? But right, do your research, find out who's making the recommendations that you're talking about. And Amazon.com is a really, really bad place to go and look through their recommendations about anything. Just so you know, it's, any food. So Fast Company. So this is a really interesting thing. It's from 2016 or no 10/16/09. So it's 14 years old. So again, look very closely. I mean, this showed up in the top 10 search results, right? The first page of results, and it's an article which is now 14 years old. Look very, very carefully, and consider the source, Fast Company. I have no idea who Ariel Schwartz is or her background. So they're talking about, right? They're talking about this company called Greenopia, but there's no link to Greenopia, right? And so this is the internet. Why there are no links, right, to primary sources? I would immediately take what they're doing as suspect. So Greenopia rated 10 of the top candy manufacturing using a number of factors, including ingredient sourcing, transparency, transportation, and product packaging. Really, really good. I think that's a good set of factors. Each of the usual suspects, Jelly Belly, I forget who owns Jelly Belly, but Mars, Nestle, Hershey, Pez, Godiva, right, received an embarrassing 0 out of 4 leaves on the Greenopia scale. But what are some companies that did? So endangered species, okay, again, this is going back to 2009, but if we want this to be, we want to think about it, well, the company Blommer is now owned by Fuji Oil. And do we want an oil company owning a chocolate company? And what do we think about that? Might be something. So Theo is no longer a privately owned company. And so, okay, what does that mean? And then Cadbury is now was purchased by Kraft, and Kraft spun its candy and confectionery division off into a company called Mondelez. And Mondelez is one of those companies, I believe, that is part of the international rights advocates suit here in Washington, D.C., which is about um, knowingly profiting from illegal labor in their cocoa supply chain. There is the list of Greenopia here in the bottom. It would be lovely to know why it wasn't up here, right? In the context, this is why sources need to be here. I don't know. But Fast Company, notice it's a really old article, and so they don't have much information. But if we're looking at across 4 or 5 or 6 sites, we'll see that people tend to like endangered species, tend to people like Theo. Of the companies on this list, I would be more likely to go with Theo if they had a product than any of the others on the list, even though I'm not entirely sure about the sourcing practices of the parent company, the new parent company, and how that is going to affect what Theo is doing. I know they're closing down operations in Seattle and moving them to like Indiana or someplace like that. And I don't know who's going to be manufacturing the chocolate or where it's going to be manufactured going forward. So these are not necessarily things that any of you are going to know unless you're take things if you're in the business and you're in the process of following the news. So hopefully what you're getting from here is some benefit of some of my background and my understanding. And so it will help you in the decisions that you're making. So Ellen, great. All very helpful. I care about what I purchase for food products. That's why I'm doing it. These are things that I think about every day when I think about the work that I do in writing about chocolate and cocoa. So if vegan is your definition of ethical, there is a list from PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. So vegan candies, right? So they're using non-animal gelatin sources. They're staying away from colors that are extracted from insects, among other things. And again, confectioner glaze is often made from insect resin. And so we want to make sure that we're not taking anything from an animal. And so what are they talking about as being vegan? Airheads. All right. So this is going to be organic sugar, right? So if it's not organic sugar, there's no guarantee that the cane syrup hasn't been filtered through charcoal, which might contain animal remains, right? And so I would be very, very careful about if there was an organic version of Airheads, maybe possible. Otherwise, not. Organic version, I have the same thing about Twizzlers. Take a look at the sugar and find out whether it's an organic version of it. Pixie Sticks, if it's not organic, there's the chances. Sweet Tarts, all of these kinds of things. I'm really, really curious as to why they think there's a big thing in the vegan community, organic sugar. Be very careful because, in fact, these things might not be vegan depending if they're not listed as organic. So just a quick note to do this. So here's something from another source, All the Nourishing Things. Again, I'm going through lists of these things. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this particular one is that they actually do a fairly good job of explaining upfront. So why you might be concerned about a bunch of these issues. They're also straight up, right? We're an Amazon affiliate, so if you click on a link and buy something, we're going to get a cut of it. So this is not technically perfect, but in terms of providing context for what you're going to be considering, right? Man, there's a lot of context here, right? That you can go through. And it's a quick way in terms of understanding some of the issues, certainly more than I'm going to go through in what it is that I'm doing, but it's worth a read. However, we go a long way before we get to the list. So chocolate bars and truffles, this should be all right. Alter Eco, not Alter Ego. We're talking about Theo. Rescue Chocolate. Rescue is interesting. It's just actually I helped them find their first manufacturer. It was actually a company called Tubador, now Brooklyn born in New Jersey. But they're using a commercial chocolate. And so while there is a good cause behind it, rescuing animals, Lily's is owned by Hershey. And so I got a problem there. Endangered species, again, Blommer. Green and Blacks is now owned by Mondelez. So Green and Blacks was purchased by Cadbury, which was purchased by Kraft and spun off into Mondelez. So even though I'm a huge fan of the work that the founders, Craig Sams and his wife, whose name escapes me at the moment, the work that they did starting up Green and Blacks, I'm not certain that today I would put them on that list. And again, Divine. So from this list, maybe Theo, maybe Divine would be. I go there. Cocoa for baking. So Wildler organic cacao nibs, I don't know where they're sourcing them. Cacao powder, I don't know where they're sourcing them. We need to do this equal exchange. There's a lot of research that needs to get done. And so the real question is, again, primary sources. Why do I think that All the Nourishing Things is doing all the homework that they need to do? We need to take things with a grain of salt, especially if it's a brand that you've never heard of before. So I went again back to DuckDuckGo and I said, is there an ethical Halloween candy guide, which is different from just ethical candy, and came up with an entirely different set of lists. And the main one I just want to highlight here is this one here. Number one, this appears to be a religiously affiliated website, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, called Faith It. Right. And what they're doing is they're pointing as a source to something called the chocolate store. And unfortunately, the chocolate store is, if I remember correctly, is owned by Harry and David's. It may not be owned by Harry and David's, but it's owned by 1-800-Flowers. I may be misremembering. But we do need to be careful about the source. So where is the chocolate store getting its information if this is what we're doing? So they do provide a link to the primary source. That's a great thing. We want to know about that, right? But here's what their list. So here's what you need to know before buying your Halloween candy this year. What's hard for me here, right, is that are these companies good companies or bad companies? It's really, really difficult unless you read carefully, right? Which I don't necessarily know that everybody will do, to know whether the people on this list are in fact good companies or bad companies, right? But the other thing I have is not all of these companies are like the others. So let's go back. This is a year old. All right. So number one, ADM is no longer ADM. ADM sold their cocoa business. Well, ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, is still its own company, but they sold their cocoa trading operations to Olam. So ADM cocoa here is, is not current news, right? And so ADM shouldn't be on this list. It should be Olam, right? But Kraft and Godiva and Hershey and Mars and Nestle are not the same thing as Fowler's chocolate. I mean, Fowler's chocolate on this list, it's a little upstate New York candy manufacturing company. I think it has 3 stores. They're primarily known, at least I know of them, for doing honeycomb candy. So it's where you take a sugar syrup and you throw baking soda into it, right? And but you don't add nuts and things like that. So they're primarily known for honeycomb candy. But Fowler's is if they do a couple million in sales a year, maybe they're doing more than that. But they're not a multi-billion-dollar multinational company. So why is Fowler's on this list? I mean, I don't know why they're on this list. And again, primary sources, due diligence, and all those things. So it's important to be careful. There's again, but there are some things. Photo from the Dark Side of Chocolate. So the Dark Side of Chocolate was, I think the producer was Mickey Mastrati. I know the director of photography on that product, a gentleman by the name of Robin Romano, who's unfortunately passed, but just really, really good guy. And then Mickey has done 2 other films on this that I could recommend, the most recent of which is called The Chocolate War, which featured Terry Collingsworth of International Rights Advocates, who's a friend of the Chocolate Life. We've done a couple of live streams with Terry, in the past 2 years. So go and look through this. And here's what they're saying. Here's a list of companies. Okay, page 2. These are good companies. You need to think about that, right? And again, so Larry Burdick uses a mix of Calabout and Valrhona. They're now owned by a Korean conglomerate. Is Larry Burdick chocolate the same thing as Cliff Bar? They don't belong together on this list. Green and Black's is owned by Mondelez. Gardeners Chalk Candy is a really, really tiny candy company. Maybe you can get it mail order, but not everywhere. Oman Haney Montezuma's is in the UK. So, which most people would know. Oman Hene is associated with Ghana. I'm not certain exactly where the chocolate is made. Kailua is associated with obviously Hawaii. Rapunzel is owned by a huge, huge company. So again, why are these people on this list? Because some of these things are not like the other. And if this is some of these things are non-US companies and some of these things are it's fairly difficult to get Montezuma here in the United States, for example, and there are questionable sourcing practices that have been reported to me, or at least they're not being upfront and clear about their sourcing practices. So really important to know. So again, right, maybe this, why is this coming up in the first 10 search results? I don't know the answer to that question, right? But it's important to do this sort of a meta-analysis. So this company here, group here, Food Revolutionary Network, which is Food Revolution Network, which is talking about illegal child labor. Good place to go get some background. Again, when you're looking at this, make sure that you go through the links and try to find primary sources in terms of what they're talking about. Not everything can be taken at face value. And there are a couple of more things to think about. 5 ethical candies to stock your bowl. The ultimate guide, number one, it is not the ultimate guide. The word ultimate, right? It's like this is the ultimate guide. I have no idea who Study Finds is. It's who knows what they are, what they're doing. But best Halloween costumes. What is ultimate guide to Halloween? Costumes, candy, movie, and more. Let's go and talk about Halloween costumes, right? Best candy bars. So the best and so what we do is we find out that this is an aggregate. So they've written articles in the past. This article was written 9 months ago, 10 months ago, and what happens is that this article here is just a collection of links to other things that they've written, and pretty low quality in my experience in terms of the recommendations. So ultimate guide, not when it comes to candy. Not when it comes to chocolate, that's for sure. And certainly having nothing to do. This came up in a search asking for ethical candy. The last thing I want to share um, for this, maybe the next to last things I want to share with this is let's hope this link works because sometimes it has and sometimes it hasn't. All right. So people may know the name Megan Giller, who's written a book about the American craft chocolate industry. And even though she is no longer a contributor to Forbes, and this article is 4 years old, what it is that, Megan knows about the American craft chocolate industry. And so what she's doing is she's recommending Eskimos, Equal Exchange, Raka, and Cho. Now, Cho is now owned by a big Japanese conglomerate called Azaki Glico. However, I do know the chief chocolate maker there and can vouch for what it is that they're doing. And if they have minis, and I'll do a little research and put a couple of links afterwards. I said I put Cho and Raka and Eskinosi links to their mini selections in today's post. Cho is a lot of fun, right? They do a lot of interesting work. I do know that they manufacture their own chocolate in their factory in the Bay Area. What they do is they go and they actually do the roasting and grinding in the producing country. So they'll go to Peru, oversee roasting and grinding in Peru, and then bring back the liquor to the United States, and they'll finish the production of chocolate in the United States. They may be doing butter pressing in producing country as well. It would make a lot of sense if they did. But um, that distinguishes them from a lot of other companies, and I could really, really see how that would be interesting to consider. Interesting, but it's really interesting when somebody who really knows about the chocolate industry, their recommendations. There's only this one overlap here, which is equal exchange. Um, so just I also, again, that was the next to last thing. We're at an hour, and I want to do one last thing. So this is shared by Keith. Unfortunately, I'm the way I'm sharing my screen here. I can't share the audio on this, right? But what I want to talk about, and this actually might be the best thing that you can do with your children, this video is all about these kids um, taking the Halloween candy that they got and putting it out on the floor. So it's a brother and a sister putting it out on the floor and then talking about what they like and what they don't like. Right. And I think that this represents a really, really interesting opportunity as a parent to discuss these issues with your children as a part of the Halloween haul, right? To go through and talk about, um, which ones you like and why you like them, and if there are issues associated with, um, you know, lots of trash or perhaps illegal labor or other things like that, you can start asking the questions as a part of the haul. And I know many parents, certainly this is something that I did. We'd make sure our kids did this, even if they ended up staying up extra late. We do that night to make sure that there was nothing that we thought was unsafe to eat, and also a really good lesson, right, to be able to go through as a part of examining the stash. This is obviously the next morning that they're doing this over breakfast. But think about using the sorting of the bags of candy that they get as a learning opportunity to go through and review what it is your kids have got. This is a place where you as a parent might be able to share some of your ethics. I don't necessarily know you want to demonize everything, but it's a place to share the values that are important. Another place, hopefully, another place to share the values that you hold with your children around this particular issue. Another thing that I would say is if you do decide to purchase a more expensive ethically sourced chocolate, so if you do decide to get Askinosie Minis, one of the things that I might do with that is I might actually give it to the adults who are following the children around. So who come to the door with the children and have an opportunity to engage with the adults, right? And if there's any left over, what you can do is you can use it yourself to engage with the parents, babysitters, other adults who are associated with your children as a way to share what it is you're doing. You're not necessarily interrupting the joy of the trick or treating process, but it is a way to start thinking about these kinds of issues and how you would share these things with the members of your community. What is important to you? What do you think valuable? Can you engage in these discussions? And see how people react when you gift these things to the adults and whether or not they're open to these conversations. They may or may not be. But I think that sort of way of thinking about the entire thing is, I think, a great way to engage in the larger discussions with adults who are the ones who are making the purchasing decisions in the first place, right? So with that, what I want to say is thank you to everyone who commented. Ellen, thank you for your comments. Brigitte, thank you for your comments today. Keith, for recommending the video, which I recommend you go watch. Finally, to remind everybody that the sponsors of this episode of the Chocolate Life Live, as the sponsors of every episode of the Chocolate Life Live, are members of the Chocolate Life. If you're not currently a member, please go to thechocolatelife.com. I'm logged in, so it says this is my account. If you're not logged in, you're not a member, it'll say join. Click on the join button. There's always a free membership. Help grow the community, share the community, let other people know what's going on. And of course, if you like this video, you're on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, like the video, comment, share with others. And the same thing is true of YouTube LinkedIn and Facebook. Appreciate the shout out. I don't have Patreon. I'm not doing advertising. All of the support that goes to keeping the Chocolate Life live, the Chocolate Life and the Chocolate Life up and running is from the memberships. And with that, I want to close out, as I always do, by reminding everybody, especially as we come into this Halloween season, that if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody.